Hello, I'd like to welcome Dr. Adam Hartstone-Rose from North Carolina State University, who's going to be our lead researcher for our big world's largest ever study of animal behavior during a total solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024. And here are my 30 students that are coming to Dallas with me. And this recording is going to go out to other teachers and other students. And we're going to talk about the protocol to observe these animals during the eclipse so that we can publish our results later. So welcome.
Hi, how's everybody doing? You look exhausted, isn't it? First thing in the morning, or you're just high school students and you always look that way. Is that how this is working? Y'all look older. Oh, I say y'all because I'm from the South here in North Carolina. You guys look older. How old are you in this class? You can hear me.
16-ish.
16-ish? 16-ish? Okay, great. And are you excited about this amazing opportunity to come to Texas to see an eclipse? It's kind of crazy. Yeah, we're excited. It's pretty cool. You guys were more or less on the pathway of the 2017 eclipse, right? So that started, I think that the totality pathway was maybe in Oregon. So you probably didn't have totality where you are, but do any of you remember the eclipse from 2017?
Yeah.
You do? Do you remember how much, like what percent totality there was around you?
I
No?
think it was around 88% for Vancouver area.
18?
88.
Oh, 88. Yeah, 88 is great. So that's probably really pretty dim. But what you may not have been able to appreciate is that last few percent make all the difference in the world. Like it's really amazing. And so I'm super excited for you. When I first got the idea to really try to study animal behavior during the eclipse, I thought that it was going to be not that amazing. In all honesty, I didn't think that the animals were going to do much. I spent a lot of time watching animals. I've gone all over the world and have done animal observations. Most especially, I've done a lot of work in Madagascar, chasing lemurs through the jungles. And in my experience, animals don't seem to be terribly aware of what's happening, in the skies at any given moment. And so I really thought that nothing much was going to happen. And nonetheless, we set up a study where I trained 40 different people. So some of them were college students, some were zookeepers, some were volunteers. And I set them up all throughout the zoo, and we observed, I believe it was 12 different enclosures with something like 17 different species of animals. So we had a few birds, we had a bunch of mammals, we had a couple of reptiles as well. And what really stood out was that the animals did amazing things during the eclipse. It was remarkable. So have you guys talked about some of the reactions that animals had to the eclipse when we were studying it? I see one shaking head. Nobody has ever heard of animal behavior during an eclipse. I see one nodding head. Now I'm really confused. One person has heard of about this. Okay. So
one person was paying attention when I talked and one wasn't. I think that's
oh yeah, so you always look this sleepy, and so that's what I'm gathering. Okay, so what were some of the behaviors that we observed? Does anybody remember? They fell into a few categories, into a couple broad categories.
crazy.
Crazy. So there was some craziness. What's that?
They did an interview with our local planetarium, and they did look into some of the behaviors maybe they forgot. You remember, Riley?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Seth had mentioned during that interview was that some of the animals began to fall into nighttime routines.
Nighttime routine.
When the eclipse was nearing totality.
Yeah. Yeah, so I couldn't hear much of that. I heard nighttime routine. So we had a lot of animals react as if it was turning night. The funniest one, so I was in one of those enclosures. Have any of you been in one of those an aviary enclosure that you go in the space with the birds? Have any of you done that? And so yeah, so I was in one of these, and they had these little Australian parrot-looking things. I don't know exactly what they're like, lorikeets or something like that. And what was hilarious is they did their entire evening sleeping waking up routine all in a span of like 3 minutes. So they kind of all gathered together as a flock as like the totality approached in those last couple minutes. And then they all went into their nest boxes for like the 30, no, I think that totality was like a minute, 40 seconds or something. So they were in their nest boxes. I don't know if they actually fell asleep, but they all went to where they sleep. And then as totality lapsed, they all came back out and acted like it was like a whole new morning. So that was pretty crazy. But we had a lot of animals react as if it was doing their evening routine. Some went towards like their enclosures, like where they go to sleep. One of the more interesting ones, we watched one nocturnal bird. So a lot of nocturnal animals are not kept outside, like to be susceptible to sunlight. But there was one bird that was on display, and it did its entire, like it basically woke up and did like its nighttime routine during totality. So that was a lot of the behavior. There was one other major category of behaviors that we saw. Does anybody remember the other major category? So we had nighttime, and then what else?
Heard somebody say something about them kind of freaking out because they don't know what's happening.
Freaking out would be a good term for it. The technical term that we used was anxiety related behaviors. So a lot of animals at zoos exhibit anxiety. It's kind of sad. One of the sad things about zoos is you can see like have any of you ever seen like animals pacing around their cage? Or sometimes they'll do like very repetitive behaviors. Have you seen that? Sometimes like birds will pluck out their feathers, or animals will like not groom themselves. And so there are some signs that we take to mean that the animals are anxious. And we actually saw a lot of animals do things that relate to anxiety. So some of them started sort of running around. Some of them started getting really like tense and fighting amongst each other. And then the only other category of behavior, there were some behaviors that we called other, which was just sort of other weird anomalous behaviors. The craziest one, this is the real test to see if any of you really read my paper. Does anybody remember what the Galapagos tortoises did? If you don't, you're going to be disappointed. Oh, we got one hand shot to the roof. What did the Galapagos tortoises do during totality?
They fell asleep? No, I don't
Fell
think so.
asleep. No, that would have been interesting. It would have been interesting. But what they did was mind-blowing. They started having sex. It was crazy. Like, so yeah, they literally started breeding, which is hilarious because these are animals that live like, you know, some of the ones that were in this enclosure were over 100 years old. And so they don't reproduce that much, but maybe the only time that they have sex is when they happen to be under an eclipse or something like that. It was like this crazy coincidence. So we collected these data in a very systematic way. Hold on one second. How long do we have for this conversation?
We have until 11, we have 20 more minutes.
20 more minutes, okay. So let me tell you about how we collected these data. So each of my research assistants had a notebook with them and some device that was telling them the time, right? So they were using their watches, or they were using their phones. And we did what is called essentially scan sampling, or it's also called ad libitum scan sampling, which is basically you look around and see what you're going to see and then write about it. And we did this more or less. We tried to get them to collect these data roughly every 30 seconds. And so every 30 seconds, if there was like a smallish group, you know, something under sort of 6 animals, they would note where each of the animals was in the enclosure, who they were interacting with. If they were doing any kind of sort of notable behavior, they would write that down. For animals that were in a bigger group, so like the flocks of birds, they would sort of write about sort of key behaviors that seemed to be going across the flock. And by doing this, we were really, and we did this for the 2 days before the eclipse. So again, the eclipse in 2017 was on a Monday, just like this one will be. And so we did it on the Saturday and the Sunday. And then we did this also on the Monday. And we did this because we really wanted to have an understanding of the normal animal behavior. And so this is going to be key. When you guys are coming to Texas, I really want you to watch the animals and try to get to understand. First of all, I want you to try to learn how to identify the animals. So hopefully we're going to be able to meet up with some of the keepers and some of the people who work at that zoo, and they might be able to actually like give you the animals' names and sort of identifying marks. And we want to get an idea of what their normal behavior is, right? So if we're interested in whether, for instance, baboons are like punching each other in the face or something like that during an eclipse, then we have to make sure that that baboon doesn't just like regularly punch other animals in the face as like their normal behavior. And so we're going to spend some time. So it might seem boring because you have to spend a couple hours like standing at your cage, getting to know this situation in order to really understand if amazing things start to happen.
So are you suggesting we go the day before the eclipse too?
I think it's actually a great idea to go the day before as well, especially if we want to meet up with people like your connections at the zoo, because that's a better day to talk with them, to make a plan, to figure out who's going to be where, right? How, like, so to get ourselves situated, because the day of the eclipse itself is going to be bonkers. So that's another thing that you have to know. People figure out that that a zoo is a really cool place to view an eclipse. And in fact, the craziest behavior that we saw was from the people at the zoo. They were doing insane things. So it was blazing hot. It was like 100 degrees. Wait, you guys use Celsius. I don't know how much 100 degrees Fahrenheit is for. It was real hot, hotter than human temperature, right? And so like it was like 40 degrees Celsius. And so people, like some people actually during the eclipse, they started like lying on the concrete to like stare up at the sun, which like so the concrete was like radiating heat and people were just like lying around like idiots baking in the sun. And so like things got crazy. And so like making the plan the day before, you know, if we go on that Sunday, or I don't know when you guys are getting there, but yeah, it would be great to meet up on that Sunday and figure out who wants to watch what. Yeah,
Okay.
does that sound like a plan? I should note, so I'm going to go. I'm going to be bringing my father, who actually assisted me on the previous research, and my brother and my son are also going to join us. And I might be bringing one of my graduate students or one of my research colleagues. And so we'll be there to circulate and to help you get situated.
Excellent. We arrive on Saturday. We could possibly do some time in the zoo on Sunday. I need to check our with our planners. But then yeah, we could meet up with you maybe on the Sunday and then on the Monday.
My guess is that they're going to prefer to have meetings with you on the Sunday, because on the Monday they're going to have a lot of other responsibilities. One thing that also you might want to be aware of is there's going to be a bit of a media circus around this too. So I was interviewed 17 times that day in 2017, including I was on the Today Show, which is like a huge show in the United States. And like a week later, somebody told me that like my media spot was worth like $77,000 of like free advertising or some nonsense like that. So like it's nuts. So people are going to be asking you, you know, what are you guys doing? Why have you been standing here for 2 hours looking at this animal that's basically doing nothing? And you're going to have the opportunity to explain, you know, that this is a really rare opportunity that we're trying to appreciate. So that's going to be kind of fun. It's especially weird that you guys are coming from Canada and going down to the middle of Texas. So that's kind of cool. So it's a great story. Are you driving or are you flying?
We're all flying.
Oh wow. Wow, that's crazy.
That'd be a long way to drive.
That would be a really long drive. Texas is enormous. All right, so let me talk about let's talk about the kinds of behaviors. So first of all, what kind of animals do we want to watch? Have any of you looked at the zoo and seen what kind of animals they have at the zoo?
Yeah, I put the list of species and several students have kind of put forth their preferences.
Okay.
That'll be on our team's chat if you have that there, Seth. What kind of species have people been putting on their choices?
Yeah, so throw out some examples of what you guys want to watch.
Elephants, giraffes.
Elephants, cool. Yeah. What else?
The gorilla, giraffe,
The
lion.
tortoise.
Gorilla and giraffe are interesting for a couple of reasons. Did you say lion? Is that another one? Yeah. So the giraffe is interesting. Do any of you remember what we saw the giraffes do? So the giraffe is an interesting species because there was one previous observation during an eclipse of giraffe in the wild. And they did something, according to that paper, they did something that I absolutely did not believe. Like I thought it was nonsense that what had been published. And then we saw the same thing. And so that was pretty mind-blowing. So does anybody remember what that was?
Anybody remember the giraffe?
What did the giraffe?
I didn't assign the paper to them yet.
Well, yeah, you guys should read. I mean, it's kind of dry and boring, but maybe a good topic would be like a good assignment would be to split up the species that are in there, and like each of you try to understand like what one or two of those species did. But the giraffe did a funny thing. They started galloping around their enclosure. So giraffe are very calm animals, and they have sort of long strides, and they don't make like a lot of quick motion unless they're trying to escape like a lion or something like that. And yet remarkably, they all started running around like haywire. It was really strange. And somebody had seen that in Africa on a safari and had published that paper. And I thought that was total BS, but it turned out to be true. So that's a cool one. So, you know, if you guys are, if any of you like are watching the giraffe in Dallas, and they do that, then, you know, 3 times is basically a confirmation that that is a thing. And so that's a really important one, you know, and it's also interesting because if you don't see that behavior, that's interesting as well, because that means that something weird was happening twice, like once in the wild and once at a zoo in a previous observation. And then gorillas are interesting because we watched the gorillas as well in South Carolina. And so whoever's going to be with the gorillas should really try to understand what we thought about the gorillas, what they were doing, and see if you agree, if the gorillas in Texas are following sort of the same behaviors. Elephants, we observed elephants as well. So all of these, I want to split everybody up. Some people should look at some birds, because birds are very sensitive to temperature fluctuations and light, right? So I talked about how animals don't seem to be aware of the light, but or what's going on in the sky. But birds are very aware of what's going on in the sky, right? A lot of avian predators, right? So the predators that are going to be attacking flamingos, for instance, in the wild are probably coming from the sky. So they're aware of that. And then also with all of like the flight navigation and things, they're very aware of light patterns and pressure changes and things. One thing that's pretty cool, did you know that there was an annular eclipse that passed over North America just a few weeks ago? Did you
We
guys
sure
know
do.
that?
We had a party here at the school. We invited the community and we had a big sale, and yeah, we
That's
got
awesome.
caught for most of it, but then we got a good look at it for about
cool.
20 minutes near the end of it, 20, 30 minutes, we got to see it, but
And did you think it was interesting or not interesting? Not really. A little interesting?
I think they liked it.
Yeah. So if you thought that was interesting, the total eclipse is going to blow your mind. I mean, literally, it is really the last few percent, like the last 3%. The difference between 95% and 100% is unbelievable. It's so exciting. So I'm really excited for you. We had a question, somebody?
Yeah.
I was wondering, do aquatic animals react?
So that's a great question. So you asked about aquatic animals. I can only hear a little bit from you from the classroom, but yeah. So we watched some sea lions and a seal, and we wrote about their behavior. So next time I see you, you're going to tell me what we saw about that. So look at the paper and see, because we had that exact same question. You know, the temperature is not going to change in their water, but maybe they're aware of what's happening above the surface. So that was a good question. We were really interested in the primates as well. I'm in part because I'm fundamentally a primatologist. Like I do a lot of work with primates. Actually, my office is super cool. You can see we have about 1,000 skulls. Yeah. We have about 1,000 skulls in our collection. You can actually see a gorilla skull over my shoulder and a lion skull up there. So that's a lion, and then that's a gorilla right there. But yeah, so I study mostly primates and carnivores, and so we watched a lot of these groups. Primates are really interesting because they do a lot of circadian behavior, so like daily routine type behaviors, and then they're also really smart. So they're probably thinking of reflecting and realizing something weird is happening. Okay, maybe not all primates are smart, gentlemen, hello. But yeah, and so we were really interested also in the carnivores as well, because carnivores, for the same reasons, they're really smart. A lot of carnivores. So if you're watching the lions are cathemeral and crepuscular hunters. What does it mean? Has anybody ever heard of the word crepuscular? It's a really cool word. Anybody? Crepuscular? No hands. So you know what nocturnal is and what diurnal is. So animals that are nocturnal do their behaviors at night. Diurnal, like us, we are daytime creatures. Animals that are cathemeral means that they're active at any times, really. But the coolest are these crepuscular. Crepuscular means that they're active at dawn and dusk. And so like lions and a lot of predators do their best hunting and are their most dangerous at dawn and dusk. And so an eclipse is kind of like a dawn and dusk, like wrapped up together, you know. And so it's interesting to think about like how some of these animals might do their behavior as well. So that's a cool opportunity.
That's excellent. Can you tell us about the way that we're going to collect the data?
Yeah, for sure. So we are working on creating a survey, basically. So there's going to be a URL that will take you to a survey. And the survey, it's really great. It's going to automatically capture data from anybody who is going to fill out this survey. And so we're going to distribute this, and hopefully we'll get literally hundreds or potentially thousands of people submitting their data from all over North America, actually. So we're hoping to catch mostly people along the band of totality, but we're also interested in questions like, you know, so if, let's say we have 100 people watching squirrels or something really boring like that, we might be able to actually detect like what % of totality matters to squirrel behavior, you know? So we're interested in like all the swath arounds there. And so we're going to be doing a survey on your phones. So you're going to all have to have your phones and data. I think phone plans and data work the same in Canada and in the United States. So I don't think that's a problem. Yeah, just make sure. And so oh, and the Zoom might have Wi-Fi also. So we'll have to problem shoot that. But it's going to ask you to sort of identify your animal, and then identify there's going to be a few behaviors that you could select to say, you know, what the animal is doing, and then there's going to be an other option that you can fill in. So we're kind of breaking this down per animal. So for instance, if we're watching the gorillas, what kind of behaviors do you think we should list as potential behaviors for a gorilla? Anybody? What do gorillas do?
Beating each other up, yeah, is one of the responses.
Beating each other up, so that is a response. What that would be is interacting with another individual, right? So there's sometimes that there's things like grooming, and you can do grooming somebody else, grooming yourself. Sometimes it's interactions with other individuals, and then you might write in that it's an aggressive interaction or something like that. So we're gonna have options like for sleeping, for climbing, for moving fast on the ground, for moving slow on the ground, etc. And so you're going to be able to pull down all those options. And something that's really cool, if you guys are really into this and you want to continue with this project, when we collect these data and we're going to get this huge database from all over North America, then potentially you all can help us analyze those data and look for patterns and see what we can see. Already we collected some data during that annular eclipse a few weeks ago with sort of a precursor to our survey. And we found a significant relationship. So have you guys taken statistics at all? Anybody take statistics? No.
I don't
Maybe
think they would
as part
have.
of like other math. So significance means that like there's a scientific correlation, and we found a significant correlation between how close people were to totality and whether they saw weird behavior in mammals. So the higher % totality you were, the more likely you were to see, for instance, your pet dog do something weird. So that was pretty cool. And so those are the kinds of things that that after the eclipse, you can maybe help us analyze all those data and look for that kind of neat pattern.
Thank you. Any last questions as we sort of start to wrap up here? Okay, so we'll maybe do it again in the new year or something like that, do something like this again, and they'll be a little bit more prepared.
Yeah, for sure. So before we meet next time, why don't you go back and definitely figure out what animals you really want to look at. Ideally, I want to have at least like a pair of you working on each cage, because sometimes it's good to have a conversation between you. And so we'll talk about those specifics. And so we'll talk about that, and then we'll get together in Dallas. Yes, I see the hand raised. You don't need a neon sign. Okay, what can I do for you, young man?
Did you collect the skulls yourself?
I killed every one of these animals. No, I didn't. No, I mean, a lot of these animals are specimens we dissect. So we study musculoskeletal anatomy in my lab. So we get, tigers on our dissection table, and we'll take off their muscles and do cool things with them. We've dissected gorillas and chimps and a lot of lemurs. And I have a student studying parrots right now. And so these are the samples, the specimens after we do the dissections.
That's pretty cool.
They're pretty excited. So I think now this was a good first sort of move. Now they can actually start to look at the species list of the Dallas Zoo and check out his paper, Total Eclipse at the Zoo. It's freely available. It's right there. Find out what species that they covered then, because we should definitely cover those same species if they're available at our zoo. And then we can branch out to other species as well.
Yeah, so think
Okay.
about we wrote about why we chose those animals. So think about what are other good animals that we can choose, and we'll expand on that.
We're starting to look at the list. Okay, so Adam, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm so excited about this whole project, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the new year.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So we'll see we'll see you all soon, and then soon after that in person.
Okay, bye, Adam.
Bye.